Coming up now is the kind of session that I love. Out-of-the-box speakers who don't fit any mold. Nothing to do with travel, but it could be, for example, it could be a neuroscientist, it could be a behavioral psychologist, it could be an artist, it could be a musician, or it could be a philosopher and physicist. And to carry on with that, here is Christian to explain our next guest.
Eh bien, pour une fois, je vais parler en français. Je pense que vous ne m'avez pas encore entendu parler français, donc c'est la première fois.
I decided to switch to English. I think you haven't, sorry, to French. Marc Halévy, he was a researcher with the Nobel Prize winner. He is a philosopher of spirituality. Now you may ask, what does this have to do with tourism? Much more than you may think. He, for 20 years, has developed theories and models for complex processes and applies that to social, economic, human processes. And also, within his activities, he is also a futurist. He is the author of dozens of books on philosophy, spirituality. Marc, welcome. Welcome, Marc. How are you? Can we hear you? Yes, yes, we do hear you.
Dans le Massif central, ou du moins dans le Morvan. Hein?
You are in Morvan, in the heart of France, in a kind of retreats, spiritual retreat, I believe. These are hard times. We are experiencing changes. Is this a crisis or is it many crises? Is it a revolution? What is all of this? Hi, Christian. Allow me to say that we are going through a paradigm shift, but let me tell you what a paradigm means. It is everything that is fundamental for building a society in the history of mankind. Paradigms are human rights, democracy, the rule of law, economics. Some key words that allow us to define this paradigm, but we also know that Socrates thought in the same way. So historians have helped us to understand the history of humankind, which is a chain of paradigms. We know that we have had many paradigms which are being replaced by the next paradigm. Paradigms are constant and they last for about 500 years. In our times, if we had to go back in history 550 years, then we would come to the Renaissance, an extraordinary time from a civilizational perspective. 500 years ago, what happened? It was the end of an era. And then we entered Renaissance. But 500 years later, this empire ends. The end of the Roman Empire also led to a big transformation. The Roman Empire invaded Greek cities and put an end to the Greek dream. So every 500 years, we have paradigm shifts. This applies to Western culture, but also to Chinese culture, to pre-Columbian civilizations. So what we are having now is also a paradigm shift. It's precisely the same thing. But what does this mean? We need to to understand this very well. We have a regulatory system of an old paradigm that regulates absolutely nothing. And we only need to look at how this pandemic is being managed, how we are managing climate change, how we are managing different financial wars. So what worked in the past no longer works now, and the new revolution that will come with a new paradigm that is now emerging still doesn't exist. So the previous revolution the previous regulation does not function anymore. We still have not come to the future regulation. So we are now in a chaos. I do not need to say much more about this. We all are well aware of the deregulation in the climate, the deregulation in our relationship with the environment. So we find ourselves amidst chaos. And it's frightening. It's frightening because we are leaving behind something that we knew, a paradigm that had existed for 500 years, and it's frightening. But on the other hand, it is a challenge because we are lucky enough to be witnessing the arrival and arising of a new paradigm. We are witnesses to the development of this new paradigm. And what are the 5 breaks that we are having right now? Well, first, populational. In 2050, we will be 5 billion more. The world's population is growing, but the Earth is small. We have natural resources which are finite, and these natural resources, 80% of the resources that humanity consume is not renewable. Only about 20% is renewable. We have wind energy. We want to transform wind into power, into high-quality energy. But to transform and create energy from wind, we must have to have windmills, which is not renewable. The apparatus is not renewable. So when we talk about renewable energy, we must be quite aware that not everything is renewable. To simplify, we lived in an area where there was abundance, where there was an abundance of wealth, but it's not anymore the case. Look at the price of commodities. The prices of commodities increased substantially in the past years. And how can we respond to this? The key word is frugality. It's a beautiful word. What does it mean? Everything that we do, in everything that we do, we have to do better with less. And this also applies to tourism. So less tourism, but higher quality tourism. The second rupture is technology. We no longer have mechanical technology, but
de manipulation humaine, de crétinisation humaine. C'est la bêtise.
And we no longer depend on machines.
Mais ne jetons pas le bébé avec l'eau du bain. La technologie
that promoted repetitive action. What we have nowadays is digital technology that opens up to incredible creativity. and provides a space to access so many things like knowledge. So digital, yes, knowledge, yes, but all of this must be used wisely with intelligence. Technology is not the future of the humankind. Humankind is the future of humankind. Technology must be put at the service of humankind and not the other way around. Thirdly, the human species has always organized itself on the basis of a hierarchical pyramid. So we have the base. Note that all human animal species organize themselves in this way, even the ants. This model corresponds to the idea that to be humans, we need to have, or to survive, we need to have the greatest amount of interaction, the hierarchical pyramid. But the world is growing in complexity, and we need to respond to this complexity. And the pyramid does not respond to this complexity. We have a new civilizational model that is growing, which is the network. And what do we have today? Today, what we have here is a network. We are networking, we are interacting through a network. So we no longer have a mechanical organization. What we have today is an organic organization. We all have 80 billion cells. And then we have almost as many viruses that work symbiotically with our cells. Where do you find here the hierarchical pyramid? It doesn't exist. It is organic and not mechanical functioning. So once again, tourism must pay close attention to all of this. The fourth rupture is the economic model. Currently, we have a different financial model. In the 19th century, 20th century, we had an economy, mass economy, produce as much as possible. Second pillar, low prices. We need to produce as much as possible to have the lowest prices possible, to reduce the costs, and thus have the lowest prices. The problem is that this model is coming to an end.
Technologiquement, on peut encore être un tout petit peu aidé, mais à partir d'un certain moment, on ne peut plus baisser.
Lowering the costs can sustain this, but there comes a point where we can no longer lower the cost of labor, of human creativity. So what will be the new economic model? It is much more a model in which where we have the value of use, the value that it will have for my life. So it's no longer an issue of price, but rather the value of utility, of use, of durability, of sustainability of the product. So completely different from what we had in the past. And this is magnificent. We can produce a value of use, of utility. But for that, all companies, all professions have to have virtuosity. Virtuosity is a magnificent word. We all need to be virtuous in our profession. Mass production and low cost has ended. And you can imagine the impacts of this, the colossal effects of this on tourism. Mass tourism is going to finish, it's going to disappear. The last idea of rupture is to give meaning. We are coming to a time where we are sick and tired of not having meaning. Next generation will only be willing to work in a company if it makes sense to them, if that company gives meaning to what they have to do, of what they are doing. It has to have spirituality. Now, don't mix spirituality with religion. It means giving meaning to people. It gives meaning to what we do, to what we make. And this is the spiritual value. And this is what we have today. The need, the demand for giving meaning. And tourism has to create meaningful things instead of falling in absurdity, in this chaos that is absurd. So these are the 5 ruptures that I wanted to talk to you about. Very briefly now, let me talk to you about the consequences of all of this for tourism.
Qui est paru sur un petit bouquin, il s'appelle le tourisme demain. Plus simple, on ne peut pas faire.
I was lucky enough to research tourism, and I wrote a book on tomorrow, the tourism of tomorrow, or tomorrow's tourism.
Vu l'évolution du prix du pétrole et des carburants, prendre l'avion, ça va devenir un luxe.
The search for exotic places, I think, has come to an end. It's too expensive. Petrol prices are too high. So I'm sure that tourists will search for proximity, for destinations that are closest to us. When I was a child, going on holidays meant going for 2 weeks or even a month, an entire month, to some place nearby, to the mountains or to the ocean. But it's no longer the case. The region where I live, average stays are 4 nights, in other words, 5 days. But this is important. Can I ask you to please wrap up, because we have run out of time? Yes, I understand, but I started late as well, and I am trying to make up for that. So shorter but more luxurious stays. So we need to value service. So it's not only from a logic of tourism for the sake of tourism. We no longer want only partying and drinking. We want to go back to the origins. We want to also come into contact with ourselves, reflect, stop and think about my own life, and then interact with others, with our families, with our friends. So it's a re-encounter and reconnecting with ourselves and nature. And then going back to nature. Most people nowadays live in cities, and they need to get back to nature. Rediscover the tree, the bush, the bee, so go back to nature. And also many people need to rediscover their roots, my history. Where do I come from? What do I have around me? What does my surroundings say about my roots, my origins, which I have forgotten, cultural roots as well, and then a search for creativity. It's no longer a question of partying and doing everything in little time. No, I want to do something, but I want to do something with intelligence, something that will inspire me, that will allow me to return to the origins. So this is something that tourism will have to offer. It must offer programs for the joie de vivre, the joy of life. Thank you for your attention.
Marc, nous sommes tellement sous le charme que nous t'avons donné 7 minutes de plus, qui est effectivement...
Thank you. Thank you. We gave you 7 minutes more than we had scheduled, but it is a sign that we were so interested in what you had to say. Thank you for talking about this transformation. No industry will be excluded from this revolution. It's not bad news, it's not good news, it is what it is. And I now give the floor to Rajat.